Hey there, my name's Curtis Lucas and you're watching Empire Building. So I wanted to do this video yesterday, but I just too many other things were going on. Obviously, yeah, today was a pretty scary day for a lot of people. Weathering a storm like that, it's never fun. And honestly, I've been so busy lately that I hadn't even really noticed how bad it actually had gotten for me. 1 week ago today, my account was worth $2.377 million. And then yesterday at the close was worth $1.208 million. That's a loss of over $1.1 million in 7 days. Continuing to invest in this sector, more specifically the Bitcoin mining public companies, is going to require nerves of steel. But obviously, it wasn't just the Bitcoin mining stocks or even Bitcoin. The entire market was down yesterday. I count myself in good company, especially after seeing Chamath Palihapitiya's tweet where he revealed that he had actually lost, or at least at one point, was down $1 billion or close to it yesterday during trading hours. It's always shocking when you hear it in absolute numbers, but obviously, as a percentage, everything's relative. If your account is only a few $1,000s large, then a few $100s feels pretty gut-wrenching. You inevitably start thinking about it in terms of how much time you spent to earn that money. How much time would it take you to earn $1 million? Who's doing the math in their head right now? I can't even imagine. But again, putting things into perspective, even though I lost $1 million or over $1 million in 1 week, in the last month, I'm actually still up 63%. So what the hell am I complaining about? Well, that's kind of my point. Year to date, I'm up 140%. I mean, the reality is this sector has performed exceptionally well, and none of us really have anything to complain about. That is, unless you had just entered last week. And if you did, I hope you were following the dollar cost averaging method, because you should be happy right now. Your stocks are on sale. Bitcoin is on sale. Everything is on sale. And the fact of the matter is, this is exactly why we need sell-offs. Sell-offs are absolutely critical for a bull market to continue. Without sell-offs, it's very hard to attract new buyers. Nobody wants to be the one buying at the all-time high. So if the price never pulls back, you can't get new people to enter into the space. And what have we seen every single time the price pulls back? Ever since we broke out into new all-time highs, every single time that we've witnessed a significant drawdown in the price, we find out that institutions bought. They do it every single time, and this one was no exception. Square purchased $170 million worth of Bitcoin yesterday. MicroStrategy purchased another $1 billion worth of Bitcoin yesterday. I don't know why people haven't clued into this fact yet. The institutions actually require sell-off events like that to increase the liquidity in the market. It allows them to fill their order books a whole lot faster. And as I've mentioned many times in the past, every time this happens, they scoop up all that Bitcoin on the open market and lock it down, thereby depleting the supply of Bitcoin available for purchase on the open market even more. And the reality is these sell-offs aren't even really that significant. Bitcoin barely pulled back to its 21-day moving average. If you use any charting software or charting websites, I highly recommend that you at least keep these moving averages on your chart at all times. This will help put things in perspective. I mean, the reality is, at the bottom of the sell-off yesterday, Bitcoin's price only reached levels it was at just 2 short weeks previously. And essentially the same is true for the blockchain stocks. We've had such a run in such a short period of time that even after a sell-off like that, we've barely managed to get back to levels we were at just 2 short weeks ago. And all that did was give people who wish they had bought back then the opportunity to buy now. We need these. The bull market needs these kinds of events. I know it's gut-wrenching. I know it's hard to witness, and you can't help but imagine how much time it would take you to make that money back if you were to lose it. But before you choose to sell, try to imagine who you might be selling to. I am never going to tell anybody that they shouldn't be selling any of their stock. As I've said many times, your decision to sell should be based on your own circumstances and your own decisions. But consider who you're selling to. You'll be far better off selling to the FOMO crowd than you will be selling to institutions. Don't sell to the institutions. For that matter, you shouldn't even be selling to me, because I know I was buying yesterday. Think about it like this. If you say you had happened to sell maybe half of your position last week, near the highs, and you still had that money come yesterday, would you be considering selling the rest of your position, or would you be excited to buy more? Just try to maintain that kind of perspective, because as we've seen in all of these stocks, all that happened is what's called a reversion to the mean. In each and every single case, Mara, Riot, Argo Blockchain, Hut 8 Mining, Hive Blockchain, Bitfarms, and the list goes on and on and on. In every single case, all we've seen is the price pull back to that 21-day moving average, or somewhere around that area. Yesterday morning, Michael Saylor got on CNBC and had quite a fascinating conversation with some of the pundits who were on one of the morning shows. I believe it was Squawk Box.
Hey, Michael, I read a really interesting piece yesterday, just in terms of how we might be looking at this a little bit wrong. Those of us who follow stocks and know about reversions to the mean, that this is different because the mean that you're going to be reverting to is constantly growing. It's happening as all of these new companies, new investors are kind of buying into that. So the mean itself, the line is one that's moving pretty sharply higher. You agree with that theory?
The most important thing to understand about Bitcoin is a bank in cyberspace for people that don't have the ability to run their own hedge fund. It's not a stock. It's an asset class. And so, if I put $1 billion into a bank and then came back a year later and I put another $10 billion in the bank is not overvalued by a factor of 10. The bank is just 10 times bigger. People are using Bitcoin to store their monetary energy for the long term. And so the price is a reflection of the monetary energy in this bank in cyberspace.
So it seems that even the mainstream media is just starting to get an inkling into what's happening here and what Bitcoin even means. Slowly but surely, more and more of them are starting to get on board and starting to open up to what Bitcoin really could be and stop thinking about it as just some kind of speculative game.
Right. It's $1 trillion. So, I mean, there's stocks that are $1 trillion. I'm trying to figure out what type of total market cap you'd need until you wouldn't ask that question anymore, Michael. I mean, people with gold, if a company decides it wants to put its treasuries in gold, I don't think they'd ask the CEO, well, did you buy some, you're going to move the entire gold market, but it's a much bigger market. But I'm wondering if there's a number where you don't ask that question, where it becomes actually would you worry if you went out the yield curve on bonds, or if you went into corporates on your treasury? Would you have to make sure that people on that were at the company weren't buying corporates in the meantime? I don't know. What do you think the number is? At $1 trillion, you could still almost make the case you can move that.
There's a $500 trillion monetary planet, and the outer layer is currency. Then you've got stocks, bonds, real estate. There's $10 trillion worth of gold in there, $1 trillion in Bitcoin. The Bitcoin is going to flip gold, and it's going to subsume the entire gold market cap. Then it's going to subsume negative yielding sovereign debt and other monetary indexes until it grows to $100 trillion. Once it gets to 10 trillion, its volatility will be dramatically less. And as it marches toward 100 trillion, you're going to see the growth rates fall, the volatility fall, and it's going to be a stabilizing influence in the entire financial system of the 21st century.
For anybody wondering, if and when Bitcoin does reach a $100 trillion market cap, we can assume we're talking well into the future, maybe 50 years or so. So for all intents and purposes, let's just call it 21 million Bitcoin, the maximum that can ever be produced. With a market cap like that, that leads to a $4,761,904 per Bitcoin. I know, difficult to comprehend. But you also have to realize 50 years into the future, how old are you going to be? And 50 years into the future, what would the overall market cap, at least in terms of US dollars, if there is still such a thing, what would that even be? My guess is by that time, there's not a whole lot of people going to be measuring things in US dollars anymore. But who knows? That's really a wholly different kind of conversation. For most of us, let's face it, we've got eyes on this bull run and really this bull run only. I know some people, and I've seen it in the comments, that really have no interest in selling these shares at all until they're old, or maybe they're going to pass it on to their kids. Not sure I necessarily agree with that, but really, to each their own. For me personally, my opinion is, well, it goes back to the name of the channel. Build your empire. Do something with this wealth. Build it into something that you can pass on. My interest is in real estate and other passive cash flowing assets. It's great to be part of these rapid growth stories, but let's face it, the honest reality here is when you're dealing with a story or a movement such as this, it will lead to a speculative bubble. And some might say, hey, we're already in the midst of that. I disagree. I've pointed many times to the interest in Google Trends, and we're nowhere near where we were back in 2017. And in my opinion, the signal that we're getting close to peak hysteria, peak mania, will be evident in those analytics. So anyone who's in this space right now, I would still consider to be early movers. And the noise in this space is going to get so overbearing and so loud, it's going to be very hard to keep your wits about you. We're going to see more and more entrenchment of separate camps, Team Riot, Team Mara, Team Bitfarm, Team Hut 8. We've already seen this with SOS Limited. This is a part of the story that really I don't have a lot of patience for, and I'm really not looking forward to it. And this is why I keep trying to drive home the message. Understand what it is you're trying to accomplish. Have a goal, whatever that might be. You don't have to try and time the top. I would just recommend being able to acquire enough to do what it is you want to do. If all you want is some Lambo in the driveway, well, congratulations. There's a good chance you might get it. Of course, it does depend what it is you're starting with. Obviously, when I got started in this, $1 million seemed like a pretty high target, but I got there a whole lot faster than I thought. So now I'm thinking,
$1 million isn't cool. You know what's cool? You?
$1 billion. That shut everybody up.
I don't know if I don't know if I'm going to make it all the way to $1 billion. And I certainly don't need that to do what it is that I want to do. But I do believe that, generally speaking, these prices are going to rise more than most of us can possibly imagine.
I don't know. I can imagine quite a bit.
Just remember that the road there is going to continue to be bumpy. And if you couldn't stomach what we just went through, it's going to get a lot worse before we get to the top. So if you think you're prone to selling into fear, then you might want to leave this ride for somebody else. But obviously, I realize today's gains right across the market was more than enough to put any fear and panic people were feeling at least at bay. And while none of us can know exactly what's going to happen next, I am very excited to see what kind of price activity we might be able to get resulting from the inevitable announcements that will be coming out over the next week regarding more ASIC deliveries that are inevitably on their way. Mara is about to receive their largest shipment of 2021, 6,300 miners, which is going to put their installed hash rate capacity above that of Riot, which has certainly enjoyed far greater price action than Mara has in recent days. But it too is also going to be taking a substantial size delivery, further increasing its production. And many of the other miners are making similar announcements. So at least in the short term, in my opinion, I think the worst might be behind us. And even if the price of Bitcoin stalls out for a little while longer, I think we can still see further action in the blockchain stocks as a result of these announcements. But as always, time will tell. That's all for this one. Now let's get back to empire building.